wait times have come down over the last year, but it's absolutely not good enough.
The mayor responds to concerns over 911 wait times.
Tonight, a caller forced to wait on hold after a teenager was shot and then died in hospital. The review underway. Good evening. When every second counts in an emergency, Toronto's mayor says being placed on hold for several minutes is unacceptable.
Paramedics have launched a review following the fatal shooting of a 15-year-old boy on the weekend, but it's not the only incident raising alarms about emergency dispatch. CTV's Allison Hurst joins us live with the details. Allison.
The Deputy Chief of Toronto Paramedics confirmed the review today at a news conference with Mayor Olivia Chow, who also acknowledged the delays, calling them unacceptable. The length of time a 15-year-old boy who'd been shot and the witnesses trying to help him waited to get in touch with 911 is under review.
We waited 10 minutes, and after that, we just hailed down a car quick, and then just, boom, threw him in the back seat.
At a news conference to announce a plan to hire more than 360 frontline paramedics, superintendents, and support staff, all to respond to rising emergency call demand and increasing response times, Mayor Olivia Chow acknowledged there were delays in 911 calls being answered.
The call came in at 10:01 at night, and then it took 6 minutes and 42 seconds for the call to be answered, which is not acceptable, and the paramedics arrived at 10:11, which is 10 minutes.
Police told CTV News there had been numerous calls that night reporting the sound of gunshots.
It's definitely something that we're reviewing.
The shooting follows a separate incident raising concerns about ambulance response times. Harrison Lohman stumbled upon a violent robbery at a downtown store on Friday.
Right in that doorway, we saw a woman who had fallen. Her head was gushing out blood. She was in a pool of blood that was growing.
Police say the suspect, they've identified as 30-year-old Liam Nisbet, entered the store, took multiple items, and attempted to flee without paying. While leaving, police allege he assaulted a staff member, causing serious injuries. Lohman and two others called 911 and waited for the ambulance. Toronto police confirmed that call came in at 6:05 and was queued for 1 minute 31 seconds.
I'm rubbing her shoulder, trying to tell her that it's going to be okay. After about 15 minutes, there's still nothing, and we saw a fire truck coming down the street, and me and my colleagues sort of ran out on the side of the street and went like this.
Lohman says the firefighters also radioed for an ambulance.
It wasn't until about 20 minutes, I think, that one ended up pulling up and getting her in a gurney.
Staff say the woman is recovering, but for Lohman, this is unacceptable.
How is this possible? This is supposed to be a world-class city. People are supposed to come here and feel safe.
He wants to see wait times come down for both calls and response times. Meanwhile, police are still looking for the suspects in both investigations. Toronto paramedics say that based on initial information in Friday's robbery call, it was deemed a lower priority, and then they got additional information which upgraded the call, and the entire response time took 15 minutes. Reporting live, I'm Allison Hurst. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Allison. To more gun violence in Toronto and our city's latest homicide investigation.
A man in his 30s shot and killed in Scarborough last night. CTV's Beth McDonnell joins us live from the scene near Eglinton and Cedar Drive. And Beth, we're learning new details about the victim tonight.
Nathan, a short time ago, Toronto police have identified the victim as 33-year-old Jordan Thompson of Toronto. I was able to see security footage from one of the businesses here in the plaza. It shows a small group of people, maybe 6, in the drive-through area here of the Tim Hortons. There is a small fight before the group disperses.
Right in front of the tree, there was a guy who was lying down, and lots of people was there.
Learning of the deadly shooting has been difficult for this homeowner. Initially, he thought a man had fainted in front of his house. Toronto police have identified the victim as 33-year-old Jordan Thompson of Toronto.
Hands is like shaking, and he was turning around here. So I didn't even think about that someone shot him.
The homeowner lives a few doors down from this plaza with a Tim Hortons at Cedar Drive and Eglinton Avenue East in Scarborough. It's where officers say around 8:30 Monday night, Thompson was in some type of altercation before multiple suspects took off. One man visiting the plaza says he heard a single gunshot.
So I stayed inside only, I didn't come out because the noise was weird. So after a while, the people were running over here and there. Then all of a sudden, everything had calmed.
Police say paramedics found Thompson with a gunshot wound. He was rushed to hospital but didn't survive.
We believe that there was a number of people that were in the area of this plaza at the time of the events that unfolded last night. And we're asking for anyone who was here to come forward and provide us with whatever information that they can.
It appears a big focus of the investigation is around the drive-through menu area, where police placed several evidence markers. They also spent several hours collecting video, taking photos, and going through trash, putting important items in bags. Community members are sad and concerned.
It's a bad corner because a lot of heat goes in there. I don't know what is going on in that side over there, but I see a bunch of people always in there, I see police cars going by a lot.
That's very unfortunate, especially, I'm not sure his specifics either, but especially if he had a family, that would just be terrible.
I don't feel comfortable to going into that Tim Horton except drive-through. I feel more comfortable to go to the drive-through, grab my coffee, and leave the place.
The homeowner is upset for his community, with police now left to solve what happened. Police say this is the 15th homicide of the year. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. Also tonight, Peel police call it the largest drug bust in the service's history, with nearly $50 million worth of cocaine taken off the streets. The results of Project Pelican coming up.
But first, outside we go for our first look at the forecast. We had sunshine to start the day. You can see the clouds have pushed in, and with that, we're monitoring for potential showers, maybe even a thunderstorm. Let's bring in Lindsay Morrison with a look at the current conditions. Lindsay.
Yeah, Michelle, we've been tracking some scattered thunderstorms through the late afternoon and now early evening. Worth mentioning that these are now weakening as they make their way into the GTA and moving out over Lake Ontario. But we're going to keep an eye on them, especially the west end of the GTA, getting some wet weather right now, along with portions of Durham region and east of that. Downtown Toronto, you've escaped mostly dry through this evening. Winds right now are coming out of the southwest. It is a little breezy out there, holding on at 22 degrees, although many communities have now dipped into the teens. Overnight tonight, we're forecasting a low near 14 degrees. Partly cloudy skies might be good for viewing the strawberry moon. We'll talk about that coming up. And just want to give you a sneak peek at tomorrow's heat and humidity. Going to feel into the 30s. We'll take you through the forecast coming up. For now, Michelle, back to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. To a major drug bust in Peel Region, authorities call it historic, the largest in the police service's history.
It follows a year-long probe, and as CTV's John Musselman reports, a group of alleged drug traffickers is accused of using commercial trucks to smuggle cocaine across the border.
Police allege more than 500 kilograms of this cocaine was smuggled into the country from the United States on commercial trucks. Today at a news conference in Brampton, the seized drugs were on display following a 12-month investigation. The first seizure occurred at the Ambassador Bridge in Windsor back in February. The second truck was flagged in May at the Blue Water Bridge in Sarnia. The cocaine was hidden in the trailers of both trucks. Investigators say it has a street value of nearly $48 million.
And these drugs came from south of the border and were destined right here into Peel, the Greater Toronto area, and other communities in Canada. And what they do is represent secondary and tertiary criminal acts, vulnerabilities, and harm that damage our communities right across Ontario.
Investigators say this drug bust is the largest seizure in Peel Police Service's history. Multiple agencies were involved, including the RCMP, the DEA, and Canadian Border Services. 9 men have been charged in connection with the case. They're facing a combined 35 criminal charges.
The success of Project Pelican sends a clear message to anybody in organized crime or anybody who thinks they can simply just get away with it. They absolutely cannot.
2 semi-automatic firearms were also seized. Last Friday, police executed a number of search warrants in Peel, Caledon, and the City of Toronto. John Musselman, CTV News in Brampton.
Meantime, Ontario Provincial Police have announced the results of a major drug bust, including the seizure of a large amount of fentanyl.
We will remain vigilant as these criminal networks constantly evolve. Law enforcement must follow suit in order to identify, disrupt, and dismantle these networks.
Project Bionic and Project Golden resulted in 43.5 kilograms of fentanyl being seized. That works out to more than 435,000 potentially lethal street-level doses. Project Bionic was a first-of-its-kind investigation for the OPP. It targeted an operation that used a dark web to ship a high volume of drugs across the country. In addition to fentanyl, police also seized cocaine, meth, heroin, ketamine, and prescription drugs, as well as a gun and several vehicles.
And take a look at this. Border agents at Pearson Airport seized more than $400,000 worth of cocaine hidden in shoes. Officials say a traveler arriving from Guyana was arrested on May 26th after 3.5 kilograms of cocaine was found using contraband detection technology, including X-rays and narcotic identification kits. The total value of the cocaine was pegged at more than $437,000.
Still ahead, President Trump orders additional soldiers to Los Angeles, the latest on the unrest and the war of words between the different levels of government.
3 days of mourning have been declared in Austria after a deadly school shooting today. 10 people were killed when a former student opened fire at a secondary school in the southern city of Graz. 12 others were injured. The 21-year-old suspect from Austria took his own life. Authorities are still investigating, but said earlier they assume he was acting alone. A motive has not yet been determined. The Austrian chancellor called it a dark day in the history of the country.
In the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian Health Ministry says 36 people were killed while trying to access food aid when Israeli troop soldiers opened fire. In one of the incidents, Palestinian officials say shots were fired towards crowds making their way to a food distribution point. Israel's military says it fired warning shots at suspects who had advanced towards its troops hundreds of meters from the aid site. One witness said soldiers opened fire, quote, indiscriminately. There have been a number of fatal shootings near the sites run by a humanitarian foundation supported by Israel and the United States. Aid workers say Israel's blockade and 20-month military campaign have pushed the territory to the brink of famine.
Canada is joining a number of other countries in sanctioning 2 Israeli cabinet ministers.
These 2 individuals promoted extremist settler violence, and it has to stop. I will add, they are members of Netanyahu's government. They are not members of his party, but rather coalition partners from far-right parties.
National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir on the left and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich on the right have both been sanctioned. They now face asset freezes and travel bans. Global Affairs says the men have incited extremist violence and abuse of Palestinian human rights in their comments. The UK, Australia, New Zealand, and Norway have also imposed sanctions on them. Israel's prime minister will convene a meeting next week to decide on a response to the measures. The U.S. has condemned the sanctions and is urging Canada and other countries to reverse them.
3 people were killed when drones and missiles struck 2 Ukrainian cities today. At least 13 people were injured in what Ukraine's president called one of the biggest strikes of the war. Volodymyr Zelensky says Russia fired 315 drones and 7 missiles overnight, hitting the capital, Kyiv, and the southern city of Odessa, while a maternity hospital and residential buildings were hit. The attacks happened a day after Moscow launched almost 500 drones at Ukraine in the biggest overnight drone bombardment of the war. Ukraine had been anticipating a response to Kyiv's drone attack on distant Russian air bases earlier this month.
The new Liberal government is spending big on defense, but a report by Canada's government watchdog says the costs have ballooned for new F-35 fighter jets.
It comes as recruitment numbers are up for the Canadian military, with Prime Minister Mark Carney saying Canada needs to meet the challenges of a dangerous world. CTV's Mike Lecoutel reports.
The Auditor General says the cost of the fighter jets Canada is planning to buy has jumped by nearly $9 billion in just 2 years. Now, inflation and the pandemic explain some of the increase, but Karen Hogan says it comes down to poor management of this massive project.
Their original estimate of $19 billion was based on outdated information.
Even before it got off the ground, the cost of Canada's future fighter jet program was already soaring. In 2022, National Defence said the base price for the F-35s would be $19 billion. 24 months later, it climbed to $27.7 billion.
This figure did not include other essential elements needed for full operational capability, such as certain infrastructure upgrades and advanced weapons.
You don't buy an airplane without weapons, and you don't buy an airplane without the garage to put it in.
Retired Major General David Fraser says at a time when defense issues are affecting our relationship with the U.S., Canada needs to make a decision as the Prime Minister orders a review of possible alternatives to the F-35.
If we don't buy this airplane, what airplane are we going to fly inside a NORAD or inside a Golden Dome that's going to be able to, interoperate with the Americans?
And the Defense Minister says those are factors Canada is weighing.
There are many countries that are participating in the F-35 development, engineering, industrial benefits, construction. We are all in this F-35 project right now.
But even if we have the jets, the Auditor General notes Canada doesn't have enough pilots or technicians for the planes.
And you have to know things about cyber and electronic warfare that technicians did not have to know about in the past. So this is where my concern would be.
A concern that the government says it takes seriously. Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
We turn now to efforts to navigate an industry under threat.
Tariffs at the center of a trade dispute impacting the Canadian auto sector. So what does the road ahead look like? It is the focus of a summit underway in Vaughan, and our Sean Leathong is there and joins us live with the details. Sean.
Well, Michelle and Nathan, the Auto Parts Manufacturers Association summit here in Vaughan today was focusing, of course, on tariffs, and they even had a visit from a federal minister. With tariffs creating an uncertain future for the Canadian auto industry.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.
Industry Minister Melanie Joly tells auto company leaders.
Right now, we are working with the U.S. to have a security and trade deal.
Today at the Auto Parts Manufacturers Association summit, Joly would not say how close a deal may be.
I know that every single piece of information I could give you is gold on the negotiation. I won't. So my point is we won't negotiate in public.
Earlier in the day, some experts were predicting tariffs will come to an end.
It isn't about us. It isn't about the rest of the world. It's all about the impact of tariffs on the U.S. economy itself.
Economist and CEO of Econosphere Inc., Peter Hall, says tariffs are already hurting the U.S. economy, showing signs of a recession, while the idea of forcing Canadian auto jobs to move to the U.S. is easier said than done.
One has to ask the question, does the U.S. have the capacity to actually absorb that? And when you look at unemployment rates in the United States, they're historically low. You don't have enough people to actually operate plants.
But there is pain to be felt. With 25% tariffs on cars made in Canada, business owners are rethinking plans.
The uncertainty is a real problem. People are delaying capital decisions. Nobody wants to make business decisions in uncertainty.
Joel McCabe, CEO of Auto Forecast Solutions from outside of Philadelphia, says plants like GM Oshawa, Ingersoll, and Ford in Oakville are vulnerable to reductions.
When you look at what they build here, Ingersoll's running at 10,000 units a year. That is not a sustainable market. You're talking about Oshawa that is reducing a shift of Silverados that are also built in the United States.
He predicts Canada and the U.S. will come to a workable solution, but
there's going to be some blood on the floor, we believe, over the next several months as they hash this out.
And while Minister Joly wouldn't talk publicly, Provincial Economic Development Minister Vic Fedeli says,
I think you'll see we're down to the end game now.
But when the game will end is still up in the air. One thing Minister Melanie Joly pointed to is the upcoming week when President Donald Trump comes to the G7 summit, saying that could be a pivotal week for the country. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leathong. Nathan, I'll send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. More than 700 people have boarded evacuation flights in northwestern Ontario as a wildfire continues to burn out of control. The blaze is threatening Sandy Lake First Nation, prompting evacuations in the community of about 2,000 people. The Canadian Armed Forces were deployed over the weekend after the wildfire doubled in size to over 1,500 square kilometers. Premier Doug Ford says firefighters from the U.S. have been called in to help fight the blazes in Canada.
Closing submissions continued today in the sexual assault trial of 5 former World Junior hockey players. CTV's Heather Wright is there for another day. She joins us live now from London with the latest. Heather.
Well, Michelle, day 2 has wrapped, and we have now heard from 4 of the 5 lawyers representing the accused in this trial.
Carter Hart arrived at a London, Ontario courthouse this morning for the second day of his lawyer's closing submissions. Central to her argument are the issues of consent and credibility. She told the judge her client should be acquitted, that the sexual encounter between him and the complainant, known as EM, was consensual, while also calling into question her testimony. Megan Savard called EM's evidence, quote, deliberately slippery, accusing her of presenting opinions as facts and telling the judge she believed the complainant had an agenda. Daniel Brown, the lawyer representing Alex Formenton, began his closing arguments next. He told the judge the sexual encounter with Formenton was consensual and said the complainant decided to accuse the 5 players of sexual assault in order to cover up the decision she made and to go after a financial settlement with Hockey Canada. It's a lot easier to explain to her friends and family that people did bad things to her rather than take responsibility for the choices she made, he said. This case hinges on whether the night of group sex in room 209 at a London, Ontario hotel in June 2018 was consensual or not. The complainant testified she was coerced into performing sexual acts, was drunk and too terrified to leave the room. The defense has tried to paint EM as a willing and active participant who has changed her story over the course of both the investigation and the trial. The Crown will have the opportunity to respond to the defense submissions during their final arguments later this week.
The judge said today she will deliver verdicts on July 24th, which gives her roughly 6 weeks to go through all of the evidence presented during this trial. It should be noted that all of the players have pleaded not guilty. Michelle, back to you.
CTV's Heather Wright live in London for us tonight. Thank you. Well, there is an uneasy calm in the city of Los Angeles after days of protests over military-style immigration raids.
And there's anger over the U.S. president's heavy-handed approach. He's activated thousands of National Guard troops, and now the Marines are in the city. CTV's Joy Malbin reports.
President Donald Trump has ordered additional soldiers to Los Angeles, more than 2,000 National Guard on the ground protecting federal buildings, another 700 active duty Marines arriving. It's an extraordinary move slammed by California's governor as a blatant use of power, filing an emergency motion to block Trump's illegal deployment of Marines and National Guard in L.A.
Again, just so Donald Trump can pound his chest and act like he is in control. He is creating chaos. He is sowing chaos.
In a city of immigrants for days now, there have been peaceful protests against the government rounding up undocumented migrants. National Guard out of LA! But overshadowing their message, nighttime looting and vandalism, fires being set in the streets, and clashes with police who fired stun grenades and tear gas to disperse the demonstrators. Local police say they've got it under control.
We fully support your right to peacefully protest. Those who choose to incite violence, engage in vandalism or graffiti, or attack officers will be arrested.
The mayor says this massive military show of force ordered by Trump is just stirring up people's anger.
And it makes me feel like our city is actually a test case for what happens when the federal government moves in and takes the authority away from the state.
As the unrest over immigration raids moves to other cities from Texas to New York, the president took credit for easing tensions in L.A., but still in a war of words with California's governor.
He's done a bad job, causing a lot of death and a lot of potential death. If we didn't send out the National Guard, Los Angeles would be burning right now.
President Trump says he'll consider withdrawing soldiers when he feels the danger has passed, warning any protesters who try to disrupt his military parade here in Washington this weekend will be met with heavy force. Joy Malbin, CTV News, Washington.
Coming up, a threat to asthma sufferers, the potentially harmful impact of wildfire smoke on people and even pets with respiratory conditions. Our health reporter Pauline Chan with a warning from experts.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, the bank investigator scam is making the rounds and customers are losing millions of dollars. You may get a call saying your money is about to be stolen and the bank wants to help. It's a scam. We speak with 3 victims and have some advice. That story is just ahead.
Well, have you noticed the days getting longer? Sunrise time this morning was 5:36 a.m. and the sun will set just before 9 p.m. By the way, summer solstice happens on June 20th this year. It is going to feel like summer tomorrow, but it will be chilly by the weekend. Your 7-day forecast is just ahead. And stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
It's a scam that's been around for many years, but criminals are once again impersonating bank employees to try and clean out your bank account.
You may get a call saying your money's in danger and you need to move it to protect it. But if you do, you could end up losing everything. Here's Pat Foran and Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Nathan and Michelle. We've been hearing from customers who have been caught in the bank investigator scam. The call appears to be coming from your bank and they sound legitimate. But if you get scammed this way, it's likely you won't get your money back.
I was nervous and scared and worried that, I was actually at risk.
Kristen Ernest of London got a call from someone claiming to be with her bank. She was told funds from her account were being used in drug trafficking and money laundering, and she needed to act fast.
He said, any bank accounts that you have are at risk. You need to follow my instructions during this call to secure your funds.
Ernest was scammed out of $13,500.
It was just very upsetting to know that all the money that I had in the bank was gone.
The scammer told me you have to do online banking and we have to fix the problem.
Raquel Panetta of Toronto also got a call from someone claiming to be with her bank. She followed their instructions and was scammed out of $9,000.
$9,000 is a big money for me because I'm only a cleaning lady here in Toronto.
They knew my home address, they knew my full name, they knew my date of birth, they knew my email, obviously they knew my phone number.
Petra Shim of Port Hope also got a call from someone who claimed her money was in jeopardy. She cooperated, and within 10 hours, her accounts were emptied of $45,000.
They have told me that they will not be reimbursing me because they feel that I approved these transactions.
The Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre says criminals are spoofing phone numbers, so it appears it's your bank calling.
It's a scam that can drag on for days sometimes, where the victim thinks that they're really helping with the inside job is what suspects claim.
To avoid this scam, never share your banking information such as usernames, passcodes, or account numbers. Banks will never ask you to participate in undercover operations, ask you to lie, keep a secret, or investigate bank employees. All three victims feel banks must do more to prevent this type of fraud.
I think there needs to be more accountability from these very large banks, the top 5.
And another victim didn't want to be identified because she actually still works for a bank. She was scammed out of $50,000. Criminals are using a similar type of process as if it was fraud, which is why they're so convincing. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
Well, if you like the warm weather, which I do, you should be looking forward to tomorrow.
Today was a bit chilly with the wind, and when we're talking about nature turning up the heat, nearing the 30-degree mark, that's steamy.
Yeah, here it comes. And the humidex, my goodness, it's going to feel like 32 at the height of the day tomorrow. You will once again notice a bit of a cooler, fresher feel the closer you get to the shoreline of Lake Ontario, but certainly a day that's going to feel like summer tomorrow. I want to show you what it looked like earlier today. We talked about how early the sun is rising these days, 5:36 a.m. And look at that red tinge in the sky. That is courtesy of the wildfire smoke, which again continues to linger at a very high level in parts of southern Ontario. As the sun made its way higher in the sky, we lost that red tinge. And I do want to mention that tonight is the June full moon, or the strawberry moon as it's known. Best time to see it in its fullness is going to be at about 2:44 a.m. into tomorrow morning. Here's a look at our current satellite and radar. We've got some wet weather now moving into Stony Creek. A lot of these showers now moving over Lake Ontario as well. It's been an active early evening. We're now seeing the tail end of any pop-up showers or thunder showers, but in any case, plan on a potential passing shower if you're firing up the barbecue barbecue tonight in and around the city of Toronto. That risk is still there through the early evening before we see drier conditions through the second half of your evening and into the overnight. Heading into tomorrow, we're going to hold on to the chance of a passing shower, but I do think many areas are going to remain dry. There's about midday, slight increase in cloud cover and a chance of showers around Georgian Bay, extending toward Lake Simcoe. But again, looks like we're going to be dry here in the GTA. Afternoon showers possible in through the Kawarthas and Peterborough County. There's an increase in cloud cover, though, for Thursday. Many areas going to remain dry once again. Looks like a few showers possible for us early in the morning. It's Friday into Saturday that a round of wet weather, cloud cover, and chilly conditions is set to arrive. There's our current temperature, 21 degrees this hour in Toronto. I'm just going to step aside so you can see that heat starting to build across the U.S. Midwest, tapping into the southern portions of the prairies. That is headed our way for tomorrow. Overnight tonight, our low is about 14 degrees, near normal. Into tomorrow, though, this is above seasonal, 28 for the high, humidex 32. It's going to feel well into the 30s at the height of the day in many different parts of our province. But again, you'll likely find it cooler in Kincardine, for example, around Burlington, although 28 degrees for you in Oakville tomorrow, as well as Vaughan. There's that 30% chance of showers that we mentioned. Slightly elevated chance of a shower or a thunder shower in the Haliburton area. And then things start to change, as mentioned, for the second half of this week. So back to seasonal for Thursday at 23 degrees. And then we're talking teen temperatures for both Friday and Saturday. Highs of 18, mostly cloudy skies. Watching for some wet weather late Friday and into Saturday. I'm happy to say that conditions look to improve into Sunday. Brighter skies, warmer temperatures, and it looks like we will enjoy some seasonal warmth through the early part of next week. That's the forecast for now. Nathan, I'll send it over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. Also tonight, a young man on a quest to find his music on the streets of Toronto ends up finding himself. We catch up with the star of the film Box Cutter after the break. An air quality alert may have ended in Toronto, but as wildfires out west continue to burn, conditions here could worsen once again.
CTV's health reporter Pauline Chan tells us it's not just people living with lung conditions who need to be concerned.
Not only does Christine Moffat have asthma, so does her cat, Ozzy. And while Ozzy hasn't reported on whether the wildfire smoke has been affecting his breathing, Moffat says she's been taking precautions.
Just over the weekend, I was having to wear this mask outside as well, just because of the wildfire smoke.
She says unlike the dramatic coughing fits that affect some asthma patients, she's had to learn to recognize more subtle symptoms.
It's all part of something called silent asthma, where I can feel it. I can feel my chest getting really tight and heavy. I might have difficulty talking, or I'll be running out of breath.
She makes sure she checks air quality listings every day, and she credits Asthma Canada with providing checklists and other supports to help her prepare for those difficult times.
Wildfire smoke is known to trigger asthma, and it's particularly harmful because it contains fine particulate matter and other pollutants beyond the normal sort of pollution that we breathe every day in the air. That really settles deeply in the lungs.
Upwards of 4.6 million Canadians suffer from asthma, and it can be fatal.
We do know that around 300 to 350 people every year lose their life directly because of asthma here in Canada.
Asthma Canada recommends you monitor air quality conditions, take your asthma medications as prescribed, and make sure you carry them wherever you go, and avoid outdoor activities where possible. And in fact, the latest research shows it's not just people with respiratory conditions that should be cautious about wildfire smoke. There's evidence those tiny particles, 1/40th the width of a human hair, can cross the blood-brain barrier.
And that's causing inflammation. And then that is, we think, leading to these issues of increased risk for dementia.
Researchers point out it's not just forests that burn in wildfires. Houses and vehicles are also destroyed, and that can release other harmful toxins into the air. Pauline Chan, CTV News.
For the first time in a decade, Peterborough Public Health is reporting a locally acquired case of the measles. The health unit says this is a rare exposure since the adult who contracted it is fully vaccinated. This is considered a breakthrough case, which officials say caused much less severe symptoms compared to those who are unvaccinated. A list of where others may have been exposed can be found on the Peterborough Public Health website. Measles outbreaks have been reported throughout Ontario over the last few months.
2 more members of the K-pop group BTS have been discharged from South Korea's military. RM and V have fulfilled their mandatory service of 2 years. 6 of the group's 7 members served in the Army, while another's fulfilling his duty as a social service agent. Once they're all released, BTS plans to reunite later this year.
Well, in life, things rarely go exactly as planned.
And that's the premise behind a new film shot in Toronto called Box Cutter. CTV's Andrea Kay spoke with the Canadian actor who takes us on a life-changing journey.
This is how the industry works. You gotta pay your dues.
Ashton James is the star of a new Canadian film called Box Cutter. He takes the role of leading man very seriously in something he's still figuring out what it means.
I think it's showing up for everyone else and wanting to be present so that they all feel comfortable. When I was in that position in my career where I was only in it for 2 seconds or 2 moments, the people who were the leads always made me feel really special and made me feel like I was in creation with them.
Box Cutter is about a young factory worker and aspiring rapper named Rome, who one day has the opportunity of a lifetime to get his music to a successful producer. Only problem is, he lost all his music when his laptop was stolen. We follow him as he tries to get it back and get his life on track. The St. Lucia native also stars in the upcoming series Youngblood, a remake of the 1986 film, and he's had roles in The Boys.
He's got the best superpower of all. He could be anyone he wanted to.
And short films, but acting wasn't what he thought he would do.
So my grandmother's an actor, and I think from young I probably had that bug, but when I came to Toronto, I decided to play basketball to fit in with everyone else, and I eventually found my way back to it. And I think when I accepted and allowed myself to say that I was going to be an actor, it was probably in 2019. I was at a program called CFC at the Canadian Film Center, and that really allowed me to say it for myself and you know, similar to Rome, not look for validation.
With themes of gentrification, friendship, and finding oneself, Box Cutter was lovingly shot in Toronto.
Toronto, in so many ways, is always a backdrop to all these different cities, and in our story, it's not Chicago, it's not New York. It's Toronto in all its glory and all its struggles. You know, it's Toronto for what it is.
Box Cutter opens on Friday at Morningside and Scotiabank Theaters.
At least I tried.
Andrea Case, CTV News.
After the break, Canada's Summer McIntosh making waves yet again. The teenage swimming sensation setting not 1 but 2 world records in 3 days. Highlights from the pool in moments.
It's definitely something that we're reviewing.
Updating our top stories, authorities are looking into why it took more than 6.5 minutes for a 911 call to be answered after a 15-year-old boy was shot and he later died. Officials say emergency crews did not arrive for 10 minutes after the call was placed.
CASA Project Pelican sends a clear message to anybody in organized crime or anybody who thinks they can simply just get away with it. They absolutely cannot.
Peel Police displayed the results of their largest ever drug bust. Investigators say more than 500 kilograms of cocaine was smuggled into Canada from the U.S. on commercial trucks. The drugs have a street value of nearly $48 million. 9 men have been charged.
I know that every single piece of information I could give you is gold on the negotiation. I won't. So my point is we won't negotiate in public.
The federal industry minister told the Auto Parts Manufacturers Association today Ottawa is working on a security and trade deal amid the tariff battle with the U.S., but she did not say when an agreement might be reached.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app.
Canadians are still avoiding trips to the U.S. in protests of tariffs and other controversial policies introduced by President Trump. BNN Bloomberg's Morella Fernandez has the details in tonight's business report.
By air and car, fewer Canadians crossed the border in May. Road trips to the U.S. dropped 38% compared to a year ago. It's a trend that started 5 months ago. Statistics Canada says air travel to the U.S. also dropped by 24%, and fewer Americans were coming to Canada. But that drop wasn't quite as dramatic. Smucker's is lowering its profit expectations because of American tariffs. The company makes Smucker's jams, Jif peanut butter, and Folgers coffee. It points to changing consumer behavior and rising input costs as some of the challenges it faces. Cineplex says it took in more than $55 million in May thanks to the release of movies like Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. That's $21 million more than it made last May. Cineplex says it expects this month to be strong as well. Here's how the trading day ended. The Canadian dollar is up a fraction to 73.13. West Texas Intermediate is down to 64.88. Our fix on Western Canadian Select has it up to 55.06. And the TSX is up 50 points today to 26,426. Those are your business headlines. I'm Morella Fernandez.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Less than 24 hours after losing 3 more players in the expansion draft, the GM of the Toronto Septors outlined what the game plan is now.
We knew that this was coming. We've been preparing for it. I could tell you that I do feel from a depth perspective, we were somewhat equipped for handling potential expansion and losing athletes. Now it will be piecing together the holes that we have and ensuring that our expiring contracts are remaining in our market.
Sarah Nurse was claimed by Vancouver before the expansion draft during the exclusive signing period. Kingsbury says the center is virtually irreplaceable. The Septors also lost Izzy Daniel, Megan Carter, and Julia Gosling last night. But the GM says the team will regroup and be as active as possible during free agency.
Fly ball, high and deep, right center field, it's gone!
The Blue Jays can clinch their 5th straight series win when they take on the Cardinals in St. Louis tonight. Toronto came back in last night's opener, winning 5-4 in 10 innings. Chris Bassett starts for the Jays this evening.
And the Canadian swimming trials continue in Victoria, where Summer McIntosh is rewriting the record books. The 18-year-old from Toronto topped the world mark in the 200-meter individual medley last night. She'd already broken the world record in the 400 freestyle on Saturday and bested her own Canadian record in the 800 freestyle on Sunday.
Just ahead, call them scapegoats, as in landscape. A herd of goats have been called into work at the Don Valley Brickworks, and they're not kidding around. That's coming up.
Tonight, the downsizing dilemma.
So much of the value of my home gets eaten up in taxes when I go and move.
The key barriers keeping some seniors locked into their homes longer and what it means for the real estate market. Later on CTV National News.
Dozens of four-legged landscapers have reported for duty in Toronto.
A herd of goats unleashed their grazing skills being put to work in the Don Valley. CTV's Scott Lightfoot reports.
At the Don Valley Brickworks today, the main attractions just wanted to eat.
They're absolutely adorable.
This herd of goats was brought into the city for work. Their job is to help tackle a growing problem in the meadow.
We are welcoming back the goats here to Don Valley Brickworks Park as part of our prescribed grazing project.
That project, which started last year, brings in 50 goats from a specialized farm near King City and lets them loose in a fenced area to eat woody encroachment. Think trees and shrubs that aren't native to the area, as well as other invasive plant species.
There are species that can move into the meadow and displace our native species. And if trees and shrubs move into the meadow, then it's not a meadow anymore. So the goats can help us reduce that woody spread and also reduce invasive species.
The goats spent the day grazing and are being supervised by Ian Matthews, who runs Goats in the City, the farm where the animals live. For the public who turned out to watch, it was a chance to observe nature in action.
Well, I think you're doing great work. I think it's great for the environment.
I think it's fabulous. I think we all need to have one in our garden so we don't have to mow our lawns.
And also a chance to learn Organized tours are being offered 3 times a day for those who want to get more information about the prescribed goat grazing project.
And the public is able to come and learn about the opportunities that we manage here in the city, all of the different management tools that we do. They're able to come and learn about ecosystem health. And they're also able to see the goats at work.
The goats can be viewed again tomorrow between 10 and 6 with educational talks at noon, 2 and 5. Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
Do they even know they're working? They just look so happy.
They eat a lot. I didn't realize goats ate that much. Yeah, I know. Brickworks is fun as it is, and to have this new attraction, it's kind of exciting. And maybe some people will be excited about the heat we're getting tomorrow. Will it come with stormy conditions?
It might, although it's looking like it's going to be a mostly dry day. So there is that. We've had a little bit of a stormy evening in some areas tonight. There's one more look at the satellite and radar imagery. Those storms are weakening. Waking up tomorrow morning, we are expecting some sunshine, maybe a little haze once again. There's our drifting smoke forecast. We're expecting to be about a 4 on the air quality health index for tomorrow, which brings us back into moderate territory and out of the low risk. I also want to mention that it's going to be windy tomorrow. So in addition to being hot and humid, it'll feel like a hairdryer blowing around. Don't worry, though, we do cool down starting Friday. Nathan and Michelle.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's it for us, but be sure to join Omar Sechedina at 11 tonight for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Almond with your next local newscast at 11:30.
In the meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and the whole team here at CTV News, thanks for watching and have a great night.